Hey guys, Moose here. Welcome back to my channel. I'm excited this video to talk to you about a flywheel and why you should create one. Let's get into it. So, the value of creating a personal flywheel and understanding a flywheel for your business cannot be understated. Right? A flywheel can literally be the engine that helps you move forward and helps you beat your competitors. So, what is a flywheel?
A flywheel is not a list of action steps drawn as a circle. No, it has to have an underlying logic such that if you hit component A, you can't help but go to component B. And if you get component B, you can't help but go to component C. And if you hit component C, you can't help but go to D.
Basically, a chain of dominoes. I'm a biology nerd, so the bio nerd in me thinks of a chain reaction or a catalyst reaction where you start one thing and the rest just follow suit. So where did this idea come from? It came from the research done by an incredible professor over at the Stanford School of Business, also known as the GSB, Jim Collins. Now, Jim talks about this in both Built to Last and Good to Great, and in his most recent monograph that he's created just around this idea of creating a flywheel. Now, it is in entrepreneurship lore that Jim actually went to Amazon in the early 2000s, in 1999 or early 2000, before they had gone public. And Jim shared the concept of a flywheel with them.
The Amazon case is an archetype of a spectacularly powerful flywheel. And it's the starting point of this conversation. The story of Amazon, Amazon.com, grabbing the flywheel concept. Coming out of the dot-com bust in 2001 after being taught the idea, but then taking it to another level and saying what we need to do is to capture the drivers in our flywheel, crystallize the components of our flywheel, and then turn that flywheel to build relentless momentum, unstoppable momentum. Let's think about the Amazon flywheel as they came out of the dot-com. If you lower prices on more things, you can't help but increase customer visits. And if you increase customer visits, you can't help but get more third-party sellers. And if you get more third-party sellers, you can't help but expand the store and extend distribution. And if you do that, you can't help but increase economies of scale. And if you do that, then you can't help but have the chance to lower prices on more offerings and drive the flywheel around. That's how any flywheel truly turns. Inexorable, underlying momentum.
Also, if you want to check it out more in depth, where I work through the details of it, you'll find a link below to the blog post where I break down Amazon's flywheel. So, now that you understand the concept of a flywheel from the horse himself, if you will, or straight from the source, that is Jim, why does this relate to what you're doing? Why is it valuable to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? Well, the understanding is simple. Are you compounding onto your flywheel with every action you're doing?
And the whole idea is that you don't just do a flywheel for 1 year or 2 years. There's great power. You never want to underestimate the power of staying with a great flywheel for a long period of time so that you get the full compounding effect.
You can actually see Adam from Tested, who used to be on Mythbusters, actually work on this giant flywheel here. It's amazing to see all the momentum and speed come together.
1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1, somewhere around here.
So let's keep on going.
Yes. I'm hearing a little bearing.
Yeah. Now I'm feeling vibration in this.
Notice the momentum, the speed at which it moves, the speed at which something is moving. It is so similar to Newton's idea of an object in motion stays in motion. So when you are building a flywheel for your business, the idea for you to make something sustainable is it compounds on itself over time. If you are not, you're robbing yourself of valuable momentum. You personally, on your personal flywheel and in your business, that you as an early stage founder are looking to build a lot of momentum.
One of the biggest mistakes that leaders make is to go lurching after the next big thing and to neglect the big thing they already have. And then they go back and they start another flywheel, and they go 0 to 10 to 100, and then they start another flywheel, 0 to 100, 0 to 100, 0 to 100. And they never become great. But the enduring great companies, what they do is they have the discipline to keep pushing the flywheel, and they go to 100 turns and 1,000 turns and 100,000 turns and 1,000,000 turns. After 30 years of research, 6,000 years of combined corporate history in our research database, the verdict is clear. The big winners are those that have the discipline to keep pushing a great flywheel to 1,000,000,000 turns rather than just starting over flywheel after flywheel after flywheel. They didn't destroy their flywheels, they disrupted the world around them by turning their flywheels.
So, what does that mean? How does this break down? How do you create your own flywheel?
But what it really leads to is the idea that to get full power out of the flywheel principle, it's very helpful to rigorously ask the question, how does our flywheel turn? What are the components in our flywheel? What's the sequence in the flywheel? How can we do for ourselves what Amazon did for itself?
So you observe the steps. Let's say you observe your typical day and you start noticing when you do your best work, right? For me, when I start reading, I can't help but start taking notes. And then I can't help but publish a video because I've taken my notes and I'm compiling them. I can't help but share it in the classroom. So that prompt right there, and this is one of your most important prompts, this idea of I can't help but do X, right? So it feeds onto itself. In many ways, it's almost like a vocation, right? It's like a calling. It's that compulsion of what can you not do. So with that being said, you now understand that one thing feeds onto another. You understand the basics of starting to find your flywheel. You start to look for those things that you do your best work and it leads from one thing into another. Once you do those things, then you can spend a maniacal amount of time focusing on just turning the flywheel, getting those turns so the momentum is so big that it actually continues to go without you. I was watching this great video of a commander at the space station talk about the fact that he was breaking down movies. And he basically talked about the fact that this ship would not slow down in space because there's no friction. It would just keep turning for a very long time. That's the same idea with the flywheel. It'll just keep turning for a very long time.
You can spin the whole ship, and then everybody is sort of pinned against the outside of the ship just by the centrifugal force, and that feels sort of like gravity. If you shut off the spinner, then it would continue to spin for quite a while. There's really nothing to slow the spin down. So I'm not sure why, when it starts losing power, the ship suddenly starts slowing down. You'd actually have to put big brakes onto it to stop all of that metal from spinning.
Now you must continue to add to it. And Jim also talks about this idea of a doom loop that goes against this idea of a flywheel. But the core nuggets that you need to understand is the flywheel is the engine beneath your business. The thing that allows it to compound and gain momentum outside of your actions long after you're gone. And that ties into this notion of being a level 5 leader, where you go from being just being a time teller, as Jim says, to being a clock maker. Where, time teller, you're just reading the watch, but the clockmaker, you're making the watch actually work. You understand the inner bits, the engine, how it works, why these pieces have come together. So when you do that, you can fundamentally change, engineer, and do new things and build that flywheel. Now, I want to leave you with another clear example of what does a flywheel look like. So, Jim actually breaks down his own personal flywheel here in this podcast.
Do you have a personal flywheel, and what does that look like?
I do have a personal flywheel. And here's the essence of it. It starts with curiosity. I'm just interested in really interesting and big questions. I'm voraciously curious. And if I have a really great big question, then I can't help but then want to translate that into rigorous research. Because I don't feel I can just go straight to wisdom. I need a method. And if I do good rigorous research with my research team, then I can't help but at some point have some real chaos to concept insight, because the method will lead to that inevitably if you do the method right. And then if you actually get some really good insights, like level 5 or the flywheel or the hedgehog concept or whatever, or the whole framework, whatever the insights are, and they're put together in a way that is deeply satisfying and true to the data, well, then you can't help but want to write and teach, which is what we're doing right now. I love sharing the ideas. This is what I love to do. I want you to understand this. Let me write it, let me share it, let me teach it, let me put it together in a way that people can digest it. And then if you do that, you're going to be able to have that have impact on the world, whether it be through book sales or whether it be through some interactions. And over time, I've reached a point now where I don't need to generate an income. It's just so I can kind of have a self-endowed share. But that generates the resources, which then allows you to put it right back into the next big questions that you're really curious about. So to put that in a very concrete form, after Built to Last, where I had bet my entire career on Built to Last with Jerry, and I left Stanford to see if I could do this path as a kind of self-employed professor, kind of endow my own chair and grant myself tenure. Built to Last, I had really good fortune that it was successful. I turned to Joanne. We've been married for 39 years now. And I said, okay, I'm going to take all the money that we're making from this and I'm throwing it into another big question. And it was what became Good to Great. I took all the resources. So it was the investment, the reinvestment at the end of the flywheel was to take the resources that came from the success of Built to Last, double down, and put it into the research project that became Good to Great. And I remember writing these checks for like researchers and data, and all this money is going out. Like we may have only had one successful product, but all this money is going out. And I'm writing these checks, right? They're just going out of our account. And I remember Joanne just looking at me one day and saying, "I sure hope you find something." So, and that was,
please,
please, exactly. And but that was the process, right? That if you had a successful one, then you would channel the resources into more curiosity and questions and research.
So you can take a look at the diagram that breaks down Jim's flywheel. And again, you'll find Jim's flywheel as well in the post with a link in the description below. So what you can understand is the main takeaway that you need to do is you need to get a chance to build your flywheel. And if you do, all of a sudden, every action compounds onto itself. It adds to your personal geometric growth. In many ways, it makes me think of The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And there's a great video on it here, which I'll link to. And I'll also link to down below in the description. So what it really allows you to do is to build something that is extremely powerful. Now, yes, it's heavy, it's difficult, it's hard up front, right? Each of those turns in the flywheel is really difficult up front. But the momentum you build is worth it down the line. So, leave a comment below. Tell me, what's one key takeaway that you've had around the flywheel? Tell me, if you're just excited about flywheel, just comment flywheel below. So, with that, make sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Make sure you hit the bell notification. That way you don't miss when I drop my next video. See you.